Well, that's
Hello.
that's a really cool piece right behind you, right behind your right shoulder.
This one or this? Oh,
The one closest to your head, that one. That's a really cool piece.
oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a piece I did for my collectible company, Elite Creature Collectibles,
Ooh.
and I also built
Mm.
the original creature for Blade 3 for
Oh,
Spectral
oh,
Motion. Yeah.
it's really awesome.
Oh,
Oh, well, anyway, thank you for coming, Steve.
Oh,
I'm
my
Dryw.
pleasure.
I'm kind we all me, Jenna, and James are kind of all three of us are the hosts. You know, I'm kind of the main kind of I would say kind of producing kind of role. You know, like I said in the email, we're all kind of creators in our own right. James and Jenna are both writers. I'm more the visual arts person of the three of us.
Hmm.
Obviously, you know, it's kind of a small project right now, but we're kind of hoping that it goes off. This is, you know, it's a we're working like with Doug. You know, we're working through a company that works with autistic creators to give us a voice because
Hmm.
I don't know necessarily if like sometimes some creators aren't necessarily given a voice, so it's really good for us to get that kind of platform out there because we some of us are really creative.
Yeah.
So this is the show.
Yeah.
So Jenna, do you want to like introduce yourself too?
as Drew stated, my name is Jenna Ruff. I am a creator, obviously. I mostly just write original stories, and I also draw characters as well for those characters to inhabit my worlds. And I'm more of just about the whole like in the writing aspect of a
Mhm.
lot of things because I just think that like with every piece of like storytelling, piece of media, it's like the story is the backbone of the entire
Absolutely.
production because you can add in a bunch of flashy effects all you want, but if there isn't enough substance to actually add to those things, then it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So that's just what I'm more interested in doing is just making sure that my writing is cohesive and coherent and actually well written. That's
Hmm.
just what I do.
Yeah, that's great. That's yeah, story is the backbone of everything. I mean, it's
Mhm.
hands down, 100%.
James, how about you?
Hello, my name is James. I too am also a writer, although right now I'm working on children's stories. I'm hoping to break out into writing comic books, but I do a lot of original stuff myself, and sometimes I also dabble with a little bit of voice acting and whatnot.
Cool.
I like I said earlier, I'm me. I am in the visual arts. Mostly like a cinematographer, photographer. I also do voice acting on the side. So then it's just basically I'm also in the editing room. So I'm just kind of I'm not pulling myself thin, but I'm taking a lot of the. I try to use as much of my stuff I can.
Sure.
After going through like 6 years of this.
Well, hey, the more you know, the more things you know how to do, the more dangerous in a good way that you become, That's
Yeah.
one thing I try to do a lot too, is like I try to be very open. And I've done film editing, film directing, writing, creature effects, sculpting, painting. I mean, I try to do as much as I can because there's so many just great things you can get interested in and learn from. So yeah, more power to you to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna start with some of our main questions. James, do you want to read off of your question first? We did kind of consolidate the questions
Okay.
too.
I'd be
So
happy to. All right, my first question is, what got you into filmmaking in the first place?
Well, as a kid, I watched a lot of kung fu movies, and I love action. As a kid, just something about martial arts and the movement of it. It's so dance-like and so beautiful to watch for me. So I watched a lot of that, and eventually I wanted to make my own action films. And so that's what kind of got me into it. And when I was 18 years old, I had made my first martial arts comedy fantasy monster movie called Kung Fu Rascals. So it was a 30-minute short, and I knew nothing about filmmaking. I got a bunch of friends together, and we went out and we shot this thing, and it was terrible, but it was really fun, and it got me addicted to filmmaking.
Mhm.
So after that, when I moved to LA and became a professional makeup effects artist, I was also making little Super 8 films on the side whenever I had time. Then eventually it led me to making my first full feature film, which was my calling card of the feature version of Kung Fu Rascals. Except this one, I upped the production value, you know, like actually put about $40,000 of my own money into the film, took a year off of work and just shot this thing like total guerrilla style. And so it was a lot about the substance, because the story at that point, you know, you know, it was razor thin to say the least, but there was a lot of fun concepts and a lot of fantasy elements in it. And as a calling card, it did work. You know, I ended up getting job offers to direct other movies from that movie. So that's how I got the other jobs, is from that, you know, the passion of wanting to make a movie.
Well, that's really cool. That's I even starting, especially from like going from having your own little project that was like a love letter to, you know, your favorite genre, to being able to redo the project with the budget that you wanted to have in it, or just engorge the budget. That's really awesome. That's so.
I mean, I think nowadays it's so much easier in certain respects. In that nowadays you can shoot a whole movie on your phone camera.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, about a couple of years ago, I had worked on an iPhone movie. It was a campaign that Apple does once a year, and they shoot these movies. They hire directors from all different parts of the world, and they shoot a movie in China, and it's all done on the iPhone. And the one that we did a couple years ago was to celebrate Chinese New Year, and we did a full creature makeup suit for this thing, and they hired a director here who directed it remotely. Literally, she was in LA directing a crew in China via Zoom, and it was crazy. And the movie turned out fantastic. Yeah, it was a director named Lulu Wang, and she had done this other film that was got a lot of acclaim. So it turned out great, you know. And so my point is, you know, like with you know, like iPhones and, you know, camera phones, and also too, you can do visual effects on your own computer if you learn how to do it, or you find some friends that can do it. There's so much that can be done these days, which is so mind-blowing to me, because back in the old days, like all my visual effects was all done in camera. So if we
Mhm.
had a giant in the shot, and then we had a small person, we had to do forced perspective, you know. So we had to place one actor really close to the camera, one really far away, and line up the perspectives. They look like they're in the same shot, and you know. So we've come a long way, and it's really exciting times to be a filmmaker, I think.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing I like about, like, especially older visual effects. Or
When you are working on a creature design or whatever that might be, do you take inspiration from your past work by incorporating one design idea into the next, or something along that nature, like having a design style that you like to incorporate?
Yeah, it's actually all sort of relative to like whenever I start a design for creature, usually the design is always inspired by nature of some form. And also too, it's also directed by the requirements of the script. You know, if this creature is supposed to be, let's say, a hunter predator creature that goes out and like hunts their victims or something like that, then that will automatically give me a cue as to kind of like, okay, how this creature will have all the signs of, you know, the anatomy of what a predatory animal would be like. You know, big fangs, claws, you know, very agile, you know. And so, and if it's a more a cartoony thing, or fantasy where they're, let's say it's like a fairy creature, or like a troll or a gnome, you know, then you take the cues off the script first, right? And then from there, what I do is I'll iterate a bunch of different sketches. A lot of times I'll do so many of them that some of these would end up getting reused on other projects later, you know, or variations of them. Um, so from there, then once I start designing the creatures, I try to make it all kind of like make sense. I try to tell a story with the creature, whether or not, like, you know, if this is like an old creature that's been around forever, you might put like, you know, like scars or little diseases on it, or, you know, if it's young and vibrant, and, you know, you take all this into consideration when you're designing a creature. And style wise, you know, I guess I have a pretty distinct style, but I don't usually like to fall into that trapping of being known for just one style. I like to be very versatile. So a lot of times I've done projects where I would do the work and people wouldn't even know that I did it, because I try to make styleless a style, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So and that kind of goes on to a not really, this is more of a off the cuff kind of question. So you mentioned that some of your designs are based off of nature. So, we know you, since you worked on the Guyver movies, correct, is, because the Guyver is already based off of the manga itself, you're basing just the overall body design off of, the manga and such. Did you also take into like that kind of point of like putting a little bit of like making it look more like natural? Because it does kind of give off like that kind of bug shell kind of, I don't want to say kind of common ridery, but it kind of gives off that little like bug shell. It's like a kind of aesthetic or whatever that kind of yeah, come at asking, is that kind of like how you
Yeah.
went into making the Guyver suits then?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened. When I did the Guyver, the Guyver design was very smooth and very sort of organic, but also very robotic looking. And all the cords around the body was just like, it seemed like ropes, like wrapping, And so, because the whole story was that this was an actual alien spacesuit that the aliens, the creators wore, and then they happened to put it on a human just to see what happens, not knowing that it would empower the human and turn them into like a superpowered being. I thought it'd be interesting that, because everything is based on nature, and in comic books, you got to draw things a little bit simpler, because it's so much work to draw all those hyper detail on every single frame. So they simplify things in the animation. So when I did the Guyver movies, I stayed faithful to the design of the character, but then I injected a lot of the organics. And in this case, people feel like it's bone. I mean, it's like bug insect, and there is definitely elements of that. But also, I took a lot of cues from bones, and then all the cord, the direction and the movement of the cords, instead of being just a wrap, I made it all feel more like muscle. So there was more tension in it. There's more. It feels more like it makes more sense to the human anatomy when it's on the human. So all that was sort of incorporated into that design, all the way to the finish of it. The finish had a kind of an iridescent blue, finish, metallic finish, and so combining the organics with the mechanics, I think gave it a very interesting alien kind of look. So all that was definitely taken into consideration.
Yeah, and it really shows, like, especially because it's very like insect like, it does kind of like the bone or like exoskeleton kind of look or whatever. And I don't want to say like, in a way, just especially you kind of notice it in like certain things at the time. I think like a lot of people might have taken inspiration from you, because like I'm trying to remember the right year. Yeah, Dark Hero and like even the Guyver, it came out like in the earlier 90s, and then you had something like Kamen Rider Shin came out in like what, 95, I believe.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And that suit is very, I want to say also very insect like, but it's very like fleshy to like it's an actual man bug in the case, and rather than a guy obviously in a biker suit and a helmet or whatever. But I really think it's kind of, I really seeing like that and like hearing your process with it, it's a very kind of interesting kind of
You want to hear
thought.
you want to hear a funny story?
Yeah, sure.
I actually went to the studio that was making Shin Kamen Rider in Japan when they were making it. So I visited the shop, and while they were sculpting that suit, and the reference they had all around it was my Guyver suit. So that's very, very observant of you. You definitely saw something there. Yeah.
I mean,
That's funny.
that's just funny. I was just guessing. So and that's just kind of, it's just kind of a funny thing to see, like, like suits that you've made or whatever, even like, because it's kind of known in the kind of community that like some of us are in, that you are a fan of like Kamen Rider stuff and like older tokusatsu type of stuff. So it's kind of really interesting to see the same studio that you are kind of inspired by in certain aspects or whatever, to kind of be inspired by you. That's like really like fascinating in my opinion, because Not a lot. I don't want to say not a lot of people could say that, but I don't think a lot of people could say, "Hey, you know, my suit that I adapted from a movie based off a manga got like referenced for like the actual stuff or whatever."
Hmm. Yeah,
But yeah,
in fact, did you watch the Kamen Rider Black Sun? It just came out on
I
Amazon.
am I am currently watching it. Black Sun looks really good. I really do like the monster designs.
Yeah, the guy who
So
did
I'm
that, the guy who did the suits is a friend of mine.
oh
Yeah, and he's a huge fan of the stuff that I've done over the years. So
well,
if you look at parts of the Kamen Rider suit, there's sections of it like the crotch piece. That's
mhm.
exactly like from the GUYVER suit.
Oh,
Um,
that's really cool.
yeah,
So was it like how is the migratory locust suit or like the straight up black sun suit?
no, it's the locust suits. Yeah.
The bag with this question. How did how did you and your it was you and your brother correct
Mhm.
got the rights to adapt Ryuki, which was like a show from 2002. Like how especially because there was Masked Rider back then and that kind of got a little bit of a reputation or
Mhm.
whatever. But you know, with Dragon Knight, that was like for me at least, that was a really awesome show, and it's really surprising that like Dragon Knight is basically on par with Ryuki with like its quality and everything. That I even got a Japanese dub, and some even Japanese fans say that Dragon Knight is probably some people would say Dragon Knight's better than Ryuki. Um, how did you guys even like get to Toei and be like, hey, can we adapt your show? I know like Saban kind of had its like issues adapting your show, but can we? Like, how did that
Um,
go on?
yeah, well, actually, that the way that it happened was I have a friend named Aki Komine who was one of the producers of the GUYVER movie, the first GUYVER movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so worked on a couple of films together. You know, he is a producer, me as a director. And so one day he called me up and say, "Hey, you know, I know you're a huge fan of Kamen Rider, and I'm talking to some investors right now in Toei Studios about getting the rights to do it." He said, "If I can get the rights, do you want to do it?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, I want to do it." And so I didn't hear from him for 2 months, and he calls me up later and says, "Okay, we're on. Let's do it. We got the money, we got the rights. But first, we have to make a little. You got to prove to them you can do it." So my brother and I, we wrote a little short, and Nathan Long, my writing partner,
Mm-hmm.
we wrote a little short, 30-minute thing, taking footage from Ryuki and then adapting it into our own story. And then we, with our American actors, and we shot this 30-minute thing and sent it to Toei. And then they got back to it and says, "Okay, we approve what you did. So go ahead, you have our blessing." So during the time of developing the TV series, because we knew one of the things about Ryuki was that it was very much like a Highlander sort of story,
Mm-hmm.
every man for himself and last man standing kind of story, which is quite a bit different than the Kamen Rider that I grew up with. The Kamen Rider I grew up
Mm-hmm.
with was more about justice and saving humanity and a lot of the older themes. And so having met the creator of Kamen Rider back in 1987, Shotaro Ishinomori, I met him when I was 21
Oh.
in Japan, and and I wanted to, and I know how disappointed he was with the Saban Mask Rider because I think they made it too much of a kids show. I wanted to try to preserve the spirit of Kamen Rider, and so when we did our story, I wanted to gear it more towards it was more towards adults. So, but the idea was that at the time there was a market that was very unfilled, which was called the tween boys. So it's between 9 to 12. Like there's that little market. It's really hard to satisfy the kids in that because they're a little too old for super kid stuff, still a little too young for adult stuff. So I wanted to try to capture that market, and my approach was make it for tween kids, but then make it so that their parents want to watch with them. So
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of the approach. And it was a little tough in the beginning because sometimes we had to work with the standards and practices of Warner Brothers, WP for kids.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of rules that oh, you can't do this in a kids show. You can't punch their face, and you can't say these things. And there was a lot of rules we had to follow. And so I don't know if you noticed this watching the series, but at the beginning it was very kind of kids show with
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of adult things in it. But then as it gets further and further into the show, the themes became more adult and it got
Mm-hmm.
much more darker and much more serious. And only because I know kids love that stuff and kids can certainly handle it. Like sometimes I feel like we don't give kids enough credit. Because
Mhm.
when I was a
Exactly.
kid watching these shows, you know, like Ultraman, and people were smoking and they were like drinking, and but they were saying like adult things and dealing with some really traumatic situations. And as a kid, I remember like I totally could dealt with it, and all my friends dealt with it. Like we actually loved the show more because they didn't treat us like we're stupid, you know. And so that was the approach that I approached the show. And the one thing that was going for us really well was that the lady who was in charge of the standards and practices, she also loved the show. And so, whenever I go see her and then I bring her new episodes, she says, "Oh, you're my favorite part of the week. You know, when you bring in new episodes." Like she has all these cartoons, all these things she has to watch, and she's like, "I always watch your stuff first, you know." So she was a big fan, and that really helped us because then that she let us get away with so much stuff. Oh my God, there was stuff we got away with. I didn't think we could get away with, and she just let us go. She's like, "It's fine, it's fine."
That's really awesome and really fascinating. And I kind of agree with you because, like, in a sense, it's like American television censorship and all that kind of stuff. I do feel like, a lot of kids these days, even, kids now, but back then even, and they can understand stuff. It's just really, I think a lot of the problem is like the older audiences or parents are too concerned of having to teach the kids what, some of these subjects might be. It could be like the whole thing like about like what is going on with the common rider, why can't he live a normal life, is like because, well, with him, his body is not what his body used to be. His body's destructive. He tried to grab that one kid in, I can't remember what episode it was, but you know which one I'm talking about, the scene where he's trying to save the kid and he burns their arm or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's just like the one thing I really like about like that fiction is like the hero who has been like mangled and altered by this evil organization who, is still trying to save everybody, but even if he tries to save them, it still could harm,
Mhm.
do a lot of harm to them.
Yeah.
But so like I guess a side question is, so obviously, you had a lot to change because you did not only the main series of Ryuki, but you also did the 13 Riders movie as well. So you got the Onyx suit and you got the Swan suit, and there was a couple of the other suits as well. Base I guess a small question would be, what did you like, how did you work around like basically taking, a plot from like I think it was a 90-minute movie. I haven't seen 13 Riders in a long time.
Mhm.
You took a plot from a 90-minute movie and put it into like this basically, I think it was like around 50 episodes. Yeah, around a 50 episode series. How did you, it kind of seemed like it was like naturally integrated into the series. And
Yeah.
plus, yeah, obviously you added Xaviax too.
Yeah.
So, but I guess go with the first thing, and then if you're able, if it's okay, like to just like kind of move the question also about to Xaviax too. I would love to hear about that. But I guess the first thing about adapting, a 90-minute movie into like a 45 episode show.
Yeah, well, I mean, we took the 13 Writers, the film, and we treated it pretty much as part of the TV series. Even though you had higher production values and all that stuff.
Mhm.
The way that we approached it, and this was
I think I
a lot of
still
credit
can
goes
go
to
with it,
Nathan
even though
Long,
you
my
probably already
story
answered
editor
this
on the
one,
show,
is
that we
and
had
this
to
kind of
watch
really
all the
confirmed
series
about
and then
like,
catalog all the
That
scenes with the
that
writers were in
that's really
costume. 'Cause
awesome.
obviously, we couldn't
I'm
use any
sorry, Jenna
footage
and
of
James,
the
for
Japanese
taking
actors
any of
because we
your
were
other
going to have
questions.
our
But
own
Jenna, do you
actors
want
in
to
there.
still want to go with
And
your
then from
one
there,
question?
once we
um
catalog all the
I
actions from the entire series, including the movie, then we tried to, like, with the basic idea we had of the mirror world and the conflict, what's going on. We then created a story, a basic storyline of, okay, this is what's going to happen. And then from there, we had to take all the action scenes, like, okay, well, this scene could fit into here. This scene could fit into here. We just have to shoot the beginnings of this, the middle, and then maybe the end of that to tie it all together. So like a lot of puzzle solving, really, to put it all together to make it all make sense. We used the majority of the footage that we got. We didn't use all of it because some stuff we just couldn't make work. So we ended up shooting quite a bit of action ourselves. In fact, I think if you time it out, I think the amount of action we shot here in the States was actually more than the footage we used from the Japanese Ryuki show.
Okay.
So that was it was difficult for sure because we did a 40 episode show, and that was a lot of storytelling. across, like, not only 13 writers, but then we have Xaviax, we have Maya and Trent and their storyline. We have the whole No Man. I mean, it's like all this stuff. I threw in a little bit of my fascination with UFOs and alien conspiracies. So we threw that in, like the No Man's was sort of like the Men in Black, and
Hmm.
but we put a lot of fun things in there. And then in regards to Xaviax, like I mentioned earlier, because I wanted to tell a story that wasn't like Ryuki's story. I wanted to do a more traditional good guy versus bad guy kind of story. So then we needed to focus on a central villain. And that's where Xaviax came about. And because we had the element of the mirror world, versus our reality, then there was a lot of opportunities for deception. And I thought it'd be interesting if the Xaviax was really smart, really manipulative, and he uses a lot of deception to get his way. And I think that was one element that a lot of the fans of the show really responded to. They, I was up in the forums and people would send me stuff and say, "Oh, yeah, here's what the fans are saying about the show," and a lot of people really thought Xaviax was one of the best villains in like an American tokusatsu show because he was treated more intelligently, for a kid show. He wasn't just a babbling, I'll destroy you, kind of guy. Like he was just a little bit more grounded, and I think people really kind of like that.
You wanted to aim Kamen Rider Dragon Knight towards a young adult audience, while the network wanted to aim more towards like 5-year-olds or something like that. And because of that, like, do you think that targeting towards a younger audience restricts some creative ideas? It's like, I'm not saying that like, 5-year-olds deserve, better stories.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the problem just stems from parents just, for some reason, whatever that may be, not wanting to teach their kids anything for some reason. But that, I just think that's an interesting question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When you're creating a show for a younger audience, there are definitely things the networks don't want you to do. And because of what happens is that, I hear that when a show comes on and the characters are doing something that the parents don't approve, they start calling the networks and start emailing the networks, and they get bombarded with a lot of complaints. And so the networks, they're all about getting ratings and stuff because it's all about advertising. Most of these shows are actually just toy commercials. And it's the creators of the shows that try to do more than just like, this is more than an ad to the creators. The creators are trying to tell a story, they're trying to build a world. But again, money finances it. So there's kind of like a give and take. And I think a lot of this also stems from, parents wanting to protect their kids, what they think is good for their kids. I'm a parent. My kids are all grown up now, but I think the one thing that the way I raised my kids was, when my kids were young, I let them watch a lot of stuff like kids should not be watching, like Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back. My daughter was 4 when she and I watched it together. And the thing is, and I personally think that kids should not be censored from a lot of stuff. Like, they can handle it. I told her, I said, look, there's a lot of cursing in this film. You can listen to it, but just don't repeat it. Don't go saying this stuff to your teachers and whatever. And I think that the trust that you give your kids really empowers them, and it makes them feel very included, into your life. And ultimately it sort of helps build character as an adult when they grow up, because they're giving a lot of responsibility as a young kid. And so that was how I raised my kids. And when I did Kamen Rider also too, I feel like you got to give kids more credit than we give them. Because I truly believe that's kids are smarter than people want to give them credit.
It's definitely, I think, I want to say, yeah, it's very much a widespread issue, especially in the Western market. In cases, is that a lot of parents, I don't want to say they don't want to parent necessarily, but like some of these parents, over in the Western markets, don't really want to handle having to explain to their children why this character is not around, or why this person is evil, or what this person's like whole thing is. Like, some of them just don't want to sit down and talk to him. Some of them are just more concerned about, getting on with their lives and such.
One question I had that I think probably retains to what we're talking about is, what are your thoughts on superhero movies and special effects being created today?
I love superhero movies. You know, I mean, obviously, having made Kamen Rider and as a kid, the first movie that I saw that really changed my life was Ultraman. There was an Ultraman film that came out in 1975. I was born in Taiwan, so growing up there, watching these giants with silver and red, you know, patterns all over their body, just it was just so fantastic for me. You know, naturally, I'm a big superhero fan. I love a lot of the Marvel films. Big fan of DC, even though they're completely in turmoil and they torture the fans with their
Exactly.
yeah, the whole
Yeah.
Henry Cavill thing, you know, being let go, really just is heartbreaking. I feel like there's just a huge missed opportunity there, but again, you know, like I support it, I watch it, you know, and I always like it when they make a good film out of it. Sometimes they're hits, sometimes they're misses, but I think also too, you know, it's a huge the superhero industry right now is it's highly supporting a big part of my industry too, which is the specialty costumes. You know, that was something that became a thing, I guess, not too long ago. And so now a lot of the shops that like myself and other shops that we work on costumes and stuff. As a matter of fact, on Shazam 2 coming out this coming month, uh, we worked on the costumes for Helen Mirren, Lucy Liu, and Rachel Zegler, the daughters of Atlas, for the new Shazam movie. So yeah, we were hired to do the armors and the leather work on those costumes, and it's really fun, you know, to be able to see your work on the big screen, especially in the big sort of superhero kind of bash. Um, in terms of visual effects, um, I kind of have a love-hate with the visual effects in superhero movies. You know, like I come from a more traditional mindset of suspension of disbelief. If you want to do an effect, to me, a successful effect is when you don't know that it's an effect, right? But it's a little hard to sell that in a superhero film because obviously superheroes don't exist. So already they're doing things that are just incredible. But then there's still like a certain set of standards where there's physics involved, like you're doing creatures or you're doing like, you know, ships, all that kind of stuff. There's a way that they move that's more realistic, that's more believable than the way they're doing it in these movies. But at the same time, you know, in defense of that, there's this whole video game world where everything is hyper fast, hyper, you know, like kids these days now, they're so easily bored visually by stuff. You have to kind of keep pushing things like faster and faster, more kinetic. So I understand why that's done, and I'm personally not always a huge fan of it, but sometimes it is effective. So yeah, it's kind of it's a love hate. Some parts of it I love, some parts of it I don't really care for so much, but you know, it's just kind of it's what it is.
Yeah, I also like think there are definitely points where it really feels um like especially Hollywood in general seems to be like very over reliant on CGI to literally do everything for them,
Yeah,
to the point where it's like it'll just be like pure green screen if you actually turn off the effects.
yeah.
And even nowadays, some of them just don't look all that great, to be completely honest.
Hmm.
And it just kind of feels more soulless than you if you were to get with like a practical effect. I mean, the way I look at it is like CGI would be more effective if it's like used in moments in small bits where practical effects wouldn't work. It's
Hmm.
meant more to enhance practical effects than to just outright replace them. And I think that's just what Hollywood nowadays is doing.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. I mean, it's you know, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have been on sets back in the old days where they're just incredibly huge sets. And there's something that to be said for walking onto a set and being in awe and just go like, holy crap, look at how amazing this environment is that's made, you know. You look at a TV show like Andor, where you know that was shot in England, and it was very obvious that they built a lot of sets for that. And there's just something about the tactile quality of being in an environment that just feels real versus like you know when you're watching something like Mandalorian where they have like that sort of 3D backdrop and the 3D backdrop. I mean, actually, it's pretty effective. It actually, you know, they've done something really special with that, and they're able to marry a lot of the stuff in so that it actually, you know, it actually works relatively well. but sometimes, you know, it's there's just something where you can just kind of feel like, yeah, like it was put in, like it is not quite entirely like a set, you know, like a real environment. And I don't know if a lot of people can sense that or not, but there's definitely something to be said about being on a big set, you know. Um, but again, I think the technology is really just how you use it. Some people use it incredibly
Yeah.
well and they do it seamlessly and it work beautifully. Others maybe not so much. So I don't think it's so much the technology as how it's used.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think like you know, we have some artists nowadays that like, especially if you look at like certain effects from like movies a couple years ago to, you know, effects that just came out recently, you know, I think it just really depends on also the artist too. Because if you look at like somebody like Thanos, like he I know like there's still a little bit of that disbelief, but he does look like basically in certain scenes you can see like obviously he's not there, but he does almost look like he's there. And I think it really depends on the team or depends on the person. And you know, and that's one thing I'm
But
kind of on both sides of the argument too, because yes, you know, Hollywood does really over rely on CGI, but you know, oh, it's still good, especially when like there's a specific character or specific setting that is just impossible to recreate like with, you know, practical like sets. And I'm sorry I like stepped out for a second. Sorry, my finger slipped. You know, and like I really enjoy like I'm sorry I'm showing these off. I really enjoy like how like, you know, they use like suits like this for like and they still do for like 50, 70 years or
mhm.
whatever, and like they'll still bring like suits like this out of like basically a warehouse just to be like, hey, you guys remember this? This is like the old classic stuff, but you know they'll still work, you know, and that's the thing I like about like, you know, a practical effects industry is just like if the suits like will stay around or you know if the design is classic enough, that is it shows how well the suits are designed or whatever.
Mhm.
And I think that's one thing that's something you don't really get with modern superhero movies sometimes. It's just like, you know, bringing this back out just for 1 second is like you can't have like something like, you know, classic Kamen Rider. We've had a couple like suits where he's gone from like looking like this to looking like, you know, a guy in big shoulder pads,
Mhm.
or you know certain other ones. You get the Sakurajima suit or everything, but like with Marvel, it's or even DC, like anything really nowadays, it's like you almost get a new suit every movie,
Oh yeah.
and
It's selling
sometimes
selling toys.
yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and
So
these costumes are so complicated now too. They you have to do your own textile printing on a lot of these things. There's complicated understructures you have to build, and the armors. A lot of it is like created digitally. You know, I mean, it's a lot. We've done a lot of costumes here as well. Some stuff that haven't been seen yet is coming out this year, and yeah, it's quite a process now. Everybody wants bigger and flashier for sure.
if you're under NDA that you can't talk about it, it's fine. But do you have any current projects that you're working on that you can talk to us about, or is there anything that you're like currently working on?
Yeah, it's all NDA stuff, unfortunately. But you know, I'm working for Universal Studios on a project that I can't really talk about, but it's fun stuff. Right now, yeah, we're just yeah,
Oh, it's a lot of NDA.
it's all NDA. It's like, you know, it's like I'm a walking NDA. You know, it's like we can't talk about anything until after it comes out
Yeah,
and
and
stuff. But
that's fine. I don't want you to get in trouble for saying it's like, oh, whoa, I'm working on so and so with so and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, it's
So
understandable.
yeah, I mean, none of it, not, you know, I mean, the whole NDA is just to protect the clients, you know, and they don't want people to know about what's going on. But ultimately, most of what we worked on, you know, throughout the whole history of my career, none of it really matters so much. I mean, it's like it's all top secret, and then it comes out, and nobody cares, you know. It's like, oh, it's, yeah, that was a fun movie, cool, yeah, great, you know. It's like, but I think it was just to protect them from being ripped off or from somebody stealing from them before their product comes out, mostly. Yeah.
yeah, and that you see that when like certain projects don't have NDAs or whatever, you see that happen a lot. Especially it was happening a lot back in like the like earlier like 2010s, even in the late 2000s, where you had like, the Marvel movies were just starting to come out, and then you have all these parody movies that were coming out right then and there.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was still happening up until the late 2010s, but a lot of these movies, they didn't keep it so hush hush. Where a lot of the companies are starting to be a lot more, pretty hush hush with it. Things that you'll be seeing, you won't be seeing as much of that kind of stuff anymore.
Oh yeah, we can't even bid on a project or talk about a project with a client until after we sign an NDA. So NDAs, I've been signing NDAs like all day. Signed another one yesterday, just to talk about a project. In a couple of hours, I have another Zoom call with a client, potential client, about a project. So yeah, it's all just hush hush until it comes out.
So you are a jack of all trades when it comes to a lot of things. Obviously, you're a director, a writer, special effects artist, and all that kind of stuff, or whatever. Like, how do you balance yourself creatively in that kind of field?
Well, it's very difficult because the problem is that there's not enough hours in a day, and so what I end up doing is I just work longer hours than most people, and then fortunately, because I run my own business, a lot of times if we're not super busy on a project, and I can work, I can come in a little later, work a lot later. Like I don't usually go to sleep before 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning every night. And I mostly just work, in all kinds of stuff. My friend Richard Taylor, who runs Weta Workshop, I when I was in New Zealand, I asked him the same question. I said, you have all these things going on. You're way busier than I am. I said, how do you manage this stuff? And he says, I don't. I work long hours, and I can't be involved in any conversation past 45 minutes on any particular problem, because there's just that much going on. And yeah, and I get it. It's just ultimately I can't find a balance other than just, if it needs to be done, you just got to do it. Or if you can find help, delegate it, as much as you can. Having a support system is really important. And yeah, and then when we do get busy, then I'm just working around the clock all the time. I do a lot at my age now. I still do a lot of all-nighters. Like one of the projects we did for Blizzard not too long ago, I think I had worked like a 60-hour day or something like that, with a couple of like 1 hour naps in between. So it's just, you just do what's necessary to get things done, and you try to get as many people to help you, on your crew as possible. So
Being from my perspective, I've been watching since at least like Den-O and like such like that. Are there any like recent, like in the past 20 years, series that you have been, a fan of? Obviously, you've seen like a bit of Ryuki. I guess, yeah, that's the first half of that question. But the second question is, so I've been hearing like some stuff going around that like if Dragon Knight did a lot better than how the network kind of treated it, that you guys were going to adapt the show, we're going to adapt like Kabuto or Faiz or whatever.
mhm.
Is that true or not? I guess or what ones did you want to work on? Or I guess, is there any ones currently that you would have wanted to be able to work on? I guess
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm making like 7 layered questions.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really watched a whole lot of the Kamen Riders, after we did our show, because a lot of times it's very difficult for me to invest time into a show when I'm busy working. And so, and a lot of times too, the Kamen Rider shows are really hard to follow because it's hard to find, subtitle versions of them. So even when we watched Ryuki, when I was doing Dragon Knight, none of our Ryuki shows had subtitles. So I had to hire a translator to translate the show for us so we could actually hear what's going on. So yeah, it's hard to come across that. I think now it's a little bit easier with Shout Factory and other companies putting them out. But as far as series following, one series of manga that I've been following is the new Ultraman. The one that Netflix did a series on, the anime series. Yeah, I'm still following that show. I have more volumes on order at Amazon, and they come to me whenever they're available. So I've been following that series. I wasn't sure what to make of it at first, but I love it. I think it's a really interesting take on Ultraman, and especially the story is more geared towards adults, And so, one of these days I would love to reboot and like do an original adaptation of Ultraman, because that's like the one superhero that really changed my life. So yeah, that's the one thing. Um, what was and then the other question was about Dragon Knight. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did I don't know what the rumors were, but what happened was that we did plan on a season 2 if the ratings, were better. And unfortunately it wasn't. But what we want to do was we actually had planned to do a Dragon Knight movie. I had a movie planned where they go to at the end of the series, they said there were many worlds they had to solve and many more things they had to. Well, originally that wasn't the ending. The ending was, by the time we got to almost near that point, we already found out we weren't going to be doing season 2. So I had to sort of like change the ending a little bit. But what the original ending was going to be, now they're going to go to Ventara and they're going to free all the people. So the season 2 was going to be all about going to Ventara and freeing all the people there and finding new enemies and all that kind of stuff. Um, so that was one of the options, was that, or the other option was we had looked at Fives, we had looked at Kabuto as well, and then we were actually going to take the footage from that and adapt it into Dragon Knight somehow. So there was, nothing was actually decided definitively. It was more we were looking at options, but then before we had really made a decision, we just ended up just dropping everything because it was like, okay, there won't be a season 2. So
That's actually a really cool detail, is like because obviously you take like something like how they did the Thunder Zords or the Ninja Zords in Mighty Morphin,
mhm,
where they're like, so hypothetically those would have been like Ventaran like riders or whatever and
mhm.
such to be able to, and especially the Orphnox or whatever they call them. I can't remember. I just started Fies right now, but a lot of my friends talk up Fies like
Mhm.
to death. But like I think that would be kind of interesting to see how like the Orphnox and like some of the the Fies system kind of riders could have been adapted in like that kind of setting, or even the worms with Kabuto and obviously Kabuto
Yeah.
riders. So that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we
James,
were really excited to do a season 2. I mean, especially, I put my heart and soul into Dragon Knight, and we work with so many limitations. I mean, the budget for Dragon Knight per episode was less than half of an episode of Power Rangers. If that gives you any indication. I mean, we had less than half the money to do that show than Power Rangers.
and that really goes to show like the dedication and just like the talent behind the team too, because like that I'm currently watching like some of the more current series. There are some times that are more seeing that they were caring more about like the actors and budget or whatever, but they sometimes you still see like these fantastic suits or whatever, even if they have like a fraction of the budget of like some of these like bigger like American projects or whatever.
Mhm,
Because I think like what they have like about half, maybe a quarter of like what the CW gets like nowadays for like the Flash. So it's
mhm.
kind of interesting to see what they can give or can get us for just like something like that. So
Was there ever a point where you created a design for a creature or something like that, and you didn't agree with the direction the writer and our director took the design? Like you had like a plan in mind of what you want this creature to do or act or whatever, and then the writer or director is like do something completely different, and you're like, wait, what? No.
Not that per se, but I did work on a film 23 years ago called Darkness Falls, and that was basically, it was a story of a evil tooth fairy. And so I had designed a creature that was basically like a angel of death, kind of without a lower jaw, and she had teeth of all these children all over her body, and she had these 6 wings that were wrapped around her like leaves. So it looks like an old woman in a robe when you see her from a distance, and then it unfolds and she flies around, and she's pretty terrifying. Um, and when I got to Australia, I realized that the director did not want to make a monster movie, even though it was a monster movie. And so he just started to not shoot the creature at all, and it was always like saying, "Oh, the creature's in the shadow. You can't see it. You can't," and it was very disappointing. That by the time 3 months after I got to Australia, when I left, we never shot the creature at all. And then I heard rumors that he told the studio that the creature was so terrible that he couldn't shoot it. That's why he didn't. There's no footage of it, which was a complete fabrication. Because one of the producers was a friend of mine, and he told me that yeah, this is basically what's going on. And the studio believed him. And then when they showed a trailer at Comic-Con in San Diego, the big trailer, at the very end it says "Creature" by Stan Winston, and he told me that the director was really pissed off because he said to my director friend, I mean my producer friend, if I'd known the studio was going to make me put a monster in this movie, I would have shot the original. So he completely just like, just made me look bad in front of the studio, like I was incompetent or something. And when Fangoria did an article on the film, they showed the creature that was done at Stan Winston Studios, which was kind of a burnt up old woman, kind of Freddy Krueger looking, versus mine, which was more fantasy based. People chimed in, was like, why didn't they use that original one? That one's so much cooler, to the point where they had to pull that whole thing off the web because the producer was complaining that was getting too many bad press, because everybody loved the creature that I did that was not used. So that, that only happened once, but it was really unfortunate because I think a lot of people still love that creature. And, it's unfortunate it just never got used because of politics. So,
Everything that went wrong did go wrong.
it happens. It happens. That was definitely not one of my favorite shows to work on. But it's unfortunate because the original script has so much potential. I mean, the original script that I read was actually better than the film, because there were a bunch of stuff that happened in the film, in the script, that they never shot, and these were such pivotal moments. In fact, near the end, I remember being on set, and there was the lead actor, Cheney Clay, who was the lead actor. I told him at one point, watching the rehearsals, even though I was not the director, I said to him, I said, what happened to that scene where you declared to the Tooth Fairy that you were going to like not back down, you're going to fight her? And he says, oh, well, the director didn't want to shoot that. He ran out of time, so he said he didn't want to shoot that. And I said, that's a pivotal character moment. This is the point where you go from a victim to somebody reclaiming that, and you're fighting back. And so they didn't shoot that, and then they're rehearsing the ending, and he's still like, Tooth Fairy's coming. He's like, acting all scared. I said to him, I said, dude, you got to tell them you can't do the scene like this. You have to be defiant now. You have to step up and be the hero in the scene, because this is the end of the film. And he told them, and they ignored him, and they made him do whatever. And at the end, he just looks like a victim all the way through the whole film. And it was just really unfortunate. I think they missed a huge storytelling point, a huge character development point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really sad kind of thing or whatever. Especially you put so much work into the suit. Like I think that the director was, wasn't confident enough to do it justice, and then just started to become a little bit, how you kind of explain how the story turned out or whatever. I think he just didn't know how to shoot a good suit, in my opinion. So
I mean, for sure he was afraid. In fact, I even offered, like, the storyboard stuff out to help out, whatever. But, he had it, unfortunately, I think somebody told him that, well, I shouldn't say this stuff because it's bad stuff, but basically somehow I was helping him throughout pre-production. Like, this was his first film. And he literally will come to my house and say, how do you shoot a car crash? This scene here that happens here, how do you shoot this? And how would you set that up? And I would tell him, like, well, I would use a camera lens like this. I would build a platform here. I would do, and I was kind of educating him on filmmaking stuff that I knew how to do. And then, so we were kind of buddies. And then I went on set and it all changed. Like, he wouldn't even talk to me for the first 2 weeks that I was there. And I thought, what the heck is going on? As it turned out, somebody said something to him that made him really paranoid about me, which was completely untrue, unfortunately. He was afraid I was going to basically take over his job, which I was kind of like, what? I had nothing to do with that. I was there as a creature guy, do a job. But somehow somebody painted a picture in his mind that I was going to come and take over. And he got really paranoid of me, and he wouldn't work with me at that point. So it was unfortunate, that these lies just destroy things.
yeah, and like that's just that I don't want to say it's a sad thing. Like, just some people will like go through word of mouth. I was trying to see if I could find like a production kind of thing or whatever to ask you, because all I can find right now is just like some McFarlane figurines from Darkness Falls or whatever. I guess is it okay if I just like show you for reference? Was this like anything from the like concept, or was this the
Yeah,
post?
that's the actual creature. In fact, the interesting story behind that was I was on set at the time when McFarlane's decided to make the figure. And the interesting thing was that they loved that design so much. It was a toss-up between that or another creature that was already had a movie already out. It was a huge hit. And you know, they knew it was going to do well, but instead of doing that, they can only do one character. So they chose my creature over that one because they had so much, they loved it so much. And so that was kind of really, really nice, you know, that they felt that way. So that's why it even was doubly impactful that, you know, that my creature wasn't used at all, even though everybody loved it. And the studio never saw it. They just was told that you can't use it. So it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, and I definitely know from like being a figurine collector myself, like seeing like Todd McFarlane definitely like has like an eye for like some of these like different like things or whatever, and like seeing like him like seeing his company use your design obviously compared to what the studio did is just like kind of goes to show how like much of a mastercraft the design itself was.
Yeah, I mean, Todd McFarlane, he changed the action figure industry. I mean, when his figures came out, people were just like, "What the heck? How is it possible he could do this?" You know, I mean, he literally changed the industry. So yeah,
It really goes to show like with somebody that has like a certain drive for things or whatever, that's you can make a big impact on things because we had like it was like around the mid 90s or early to mid 90s, I think actually like 91 maybe. I can't remember the exact point like when he introduced the first Spawn figure, and just like as the years went on, it went from being like a straight up like action feature toy and such to whatever to becoming like art house pieces or art
yeah,
statues or whatever.
yeah,
It was just like a really big and interesting thing,
yeah.
and
They were
we
amazing.
obviously now like there's a whole subculture of it. Obviously, you have like your pieces behind you, some of your pieces behind you, and like I mean, I have like a whole room like behind this curtain or whatever with a bunch of like these little guys or whatever because I just enjoy like the looks of all these characters. It was really nice to even have you on. I was even surprised that you even like reached back because to be honest, like I mean, you could kind of tell from the way I've been acting and talking. I'm a fan of your work.
Oh,
I'm a
thank you.
very big fan of your work, especially the GUYVER suits. Some of the Predator suits, especially. I've seen a little bit of Kung Pao Enter the Fist. That movie is still pretty funny, and I'm really amazed that that you are so much of a jack of all trades that you've done all this kind of stuff. I mean, we're basically running out of time. I had more questions, but I'm not going to ask them because you have your things you have to go to. So do you guys have anything to say before we let them go, guys?
Thank you very much for joining us for this lovely meeting and interview, and hopefully we get to see you again sometime in the future.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been really fun. It's very nice to meet everyone too.
Yeah, it was also very nice talking to you too. You seem like a very passionate passionate artist that is very passionate about what you create. Like as someone like an artist, as a passionate artist myself, I really do like understand like a lot of the like feelings about like especially of what you were talking about like how you made this like really cool design, and even though everybody loved it, they decided that we're gonna go behind your back for no reason whatsoever and then do this la la la. And it's just it's frustrating. As an artist, I find that very frustrating.
Yeah.
Because the industry just doesn't like you just doesn't like us for some reason.
No, they rely heavily on us, but yeah, you are right about that. They don't care about us at all. That's why it's more important. It's very important that we care about ourselves, and we keep working to put good stuff out there, and we keep inspiring generations behind us, just as in generations, we keep inspiring generations ahead of us versus uh, versus generations before us has inspired us. I don't know why that was so
Yeah.
hard to get out. I say this all the time.
No, yeah, and that
Carry
that's
on the
a,
torch. Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing, and I know I'm unintentionally keeping it going on because like that's trying to think of the right word. It's a good point because like you look at like some older movies like the Frankenstein's monster, or you look at like the Fishman, or you look at the Invisible Man, Dracula, or whatever. Like there's like directors all over that are inspired by those monsters, and you know obviously you're inspired by like monster shows, monster movies, like superhero shows or whatever from
Mhm.
back when you were younger. That's always really interesting.
Yeah.
So, but you probably have your thing to go to. So if you need to sign off, we will respect that because we do have to. We should do some of our own planning. So it was an honor having you on, Steve.
Yeah,
I've
my pleasure.
probably said that 4 or 5 times already,
Thank you.
but you
Thank
know,
you again for having me. Yeah. It's been
yeah.
great.
So
Yep.
Yep.
you have a good day, sir.
Okay, you guys take
Have a
care.
good day.
Thank you
Great
so
day.
much.
Bye.
I'm really ecstatic that was the real guy. I'm
Wow.
at least it wasn't as bad as it was
With Mike.
with Mike. At least it wasn't as bad as it was with Mike.
Eventually, when this episode like gets up, it's gonna be like, wow, some of this information is gonna be added to the Wikipedia page.
I'm happy that I'm not saying I'm happy that's over. I'm happy it happened.
Yeah.